can we talk a little bit about what is a disqualified person? So mostly we said parents and children.
That's right.
So,
And you.
okay.
Most
Yourself,
importantly,
yeah.
once you have set up the transaction, you become a disqualified person. So in the context of a checkbook LLC, the member of the LLC is your IRA fund. It's a separate fund. It's a separate member. You are simply the manager. And you must act in the capacity as a fiduciary and as a manager of that fund until you are eligible to take a distribution at some other point. But you must comply with it, and you must make sure that it complies with the rules. In many ways, in fact, you are exactly stepping into the shoes of the IRA custodian that funded that account.
Yeah. And the tricky part, I guess, or a tricky part is that everybody thinks, well, it's my money.
Not yet.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, it's your money, but it's in a very special account that has very special fiduciary rules that apply. And if you violate them, you can have very serious repercussions, including some really nasty penalties and so forth.
Yes, and in many ways, people think it's their money. And in fact, it's not their money until they're eligible to take the distribution. So you have to be careful about that, and you have to manage it as a fiduciary.
Okay. Okay, how about some income tax concerns? I know this isn't your, you may be throwing things back at me, and I guess that's okay. But these aren't trouble-free from an income tax point of view, depending on what you do. So maybe you can chat, like I said, you can chat a lot about it, and maybe if you want, you can even throw some stuff back at me if you want.
I won't hesitate. I'm not a tax attorney, and there's my my disclaimer. First of all, I think you raise a really good point. And bottom line with the IRA, using your IRA, is the reason you have an IRA in the first place is because you wanted to gain some special tax advantages and benefits from using this mechanism to defer your income until you were ready to retire, when theoretically your income would be less or you'd be in a lower tax bracket. That's the fundamental reason why you set aside those funds, to reduce your income tax liability through your working years so that you could use the money later on. With the Roth, if you set it up correctly, then you enjoy the benefits of tax-free income from that Roth account for forever. And so at least through your lifetime and your kids. To keep those benefits and those privileges, you have to follow some of these rules. What happens? Well, people say, well, what happens if I do mess up, or if I end up having to use that money for a way that's not allowed? What happens is the IRS, if they will come after you to say you've now basically taken a premature distribution, and you now have to worry about the fact that you're going to owe taxes and penalties on the funds. If the assets are entirely tied up in real estate, that's going to be a problem.
Right. Yeah. Where's the money going to come from to pay these taxes?
Right.
So another thing, though, that I wanted to get into a little bit, and again, not into a whole lot of depth because we don't have a ton of time left, and that is a little bit about unrelated business taxable income. And again, may not be your favorite subject, so but what it boils down to is that people don't think that an IRA or a Roth could have to pay any income taxes or file an income tax return. You know, it's just foreign to you. Well, if you have traditional investments, yes, that's exactly right. You don't have to be concerned about those things.
That's right.
But when you make the choice to get involved into alternative investments, then you may be getting into this other territory and making your life more complicated from a tax point of view. And you just have to recognize that that comes with it as part of the price you pay.
That's right.
For getting the other benefits of having a self-directed account. And so as a consequence, well, some people, for example, and sometimes this is just what makes sense. In other words, you could make an investment that you don't really know what the hell you're doing, if you will, and lose your tail. And many people have done that. Maybe they bought, a speculative stock or, high-tech stock, and they, oh, well, I'm going to make I have a real classic. One of my clients bought some Yahoo stock just before Yahoo took a dive a few years ago, you know. And so you can do that where you don't really know what you're doing, or you may choose to say, well, you know, I may have to pay some tax, but I know how I can make a bundle. I had one of these custodians here, he said, somebody said, I can get fishing rights. I know how that works. And so I may make a bundle, and it may be business income, and it may be taxable, but bottom line, I'm going to walk away with more money and feel more certain about that, and also have some control by doing that through my self-directed IRA.
Well, I think one of the bottom lines is that owing taxes is a sign that you maybe made some money.
Yes.
And as far as the mistakes, I use the term OPM. Some people think that means other people's money. I call that other people's mistakes. Consulting with a professional, you'll learn how to avoid most of these problems. But getting back to the tax liability with the unrelated business income tax, this usually only kicks in where you're doing leveraging your IRA money, and you're using it to borrow non-recourse funds to buy, let's say, a larger parcel. This is allowable. You can do it. You can borrow money with it. But what will happen is, with a large investment property, is that you will have to pay some of the consequences. The math is somewhat complicated. I'd urge you to consult with a CPA or a good accountant who can explain it. But in the end, you still come out ahead. And you can avoid the UBIT altogether with some of the products that some of these IRA, self-directed IRA custodians provide.
Yeah. So there are alternatives, you
That's
know.
right.
And so what it boils down to is you consider your alternatives. Some of them may be taxable, some of them may not. What do you feel comfortable about as far as having some confidence of what the result is and what you're going to end up with on a net basis when the dust settles? And so I think that's the big thing. Okay, well, we're getting into the end here, and so maybe you have a few final cautions that you have for people as far as getting involved, or maybe your advice in general related to Checkbook LLC.
Well, like any investment, Mike, whether you're using your IRA money or you're using your own cash or your brother-in-law's money, you want to be very careful to do your due diligence no matter what. That doesn't change just because you're using this thing called an IRA. You want to make sure you understand the investment, you want to understand the property, you want to look at the conditions, and you want to look at all the aspects you would look at for any other kind of investment. It's your money, and even though you can't get your hands on it just yet, you want to protect that investment. So you should consult with a professional, you need to do your due diligence, and when you're setting up the LLC, you want to make sure that you follow the rules.
Right. Okay, folks, well, we're getting close to being done. So I wanted to thank you for watching us today here on Financial Insider Weekly. Jeff, I want to thank you for being my guest.
My pleasure.
And I hope that I'll have an opportunity to have you come back and maybe we'll talk about some other issues related to real estate or whatever comes to mind. And folks, consider using a self-directed IRA, whether you maybe want to get involved with alternative investments. This is a big year. We have the Roth conversions that have become very hot this year. And so, but as Jeff has said, look before you leap and just be careful and get some good advice along the way. So with that, I'll see you next time on Financial Insider Weekly.